Hello, welcome back. We're at Beaver Creek and I'm with Scott Petzel, the president of Metallic Minerals. Scott, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Great to be here at Beaver Creek today.
Yeah, it's a good show, biggest they've had ever, so I hear. Yeah. Just brief overview to start with, and then we'll run into what's going on.
Sure, you bet. Metallic Minerals is a precious and base metal exploration and development company, growth stage company with key assets in North America. We have our La Plata project in southwestern Colorado, which is a copper, silver, gold, platinum, palladium porphyry system. We just announced an updated mineral resource estimate for the project. And we have our Keno Silver project in the north central part of the Yukon territories, where we're looking forward to announcing a inaugural resource estimate for the project by the end of the year, and that's high-grade silver, lead, zinc.
Good. Okay, and before we get into the thick of it, just remind us of capital structure as it stands.
Yeah, so we've got 167 million shares issued and outstanding. We're trading today at roughly 40 cents. Management owns 17%. Newcrest Mining invested in us as strategic investment recently, where they own 9.5% of the company. And then Eric Sprott, a silver bug, well-renowned silver bug, owns 14% of Metallic Minerals after his investment in 2020.
Good. I'm quite looking forward to having a chat with you, actually, because your share price is actually doing pretty well in what is a pretty soft market. So just run us through the history, because I think we last called up maybe in December in London. So there's been quite a lot that's happened since then. Give us a run through, and I wouldn't mind actually touching on why you think Newcrest actually got involved as well.
Yeah, you bet. Well, that's easy. So we can start with April of 2022, where we announced our inaugural resource on the La Plata project in Colorado. We followed that up very quickly with a drill program in the summer of 2022, and we intercepted 816 meters of continuous mineralization at 0.41% copper equivalent recovered, which is a pretty big number. It was one of the best holes in the copper space in North America in the last several years. We didn't announce those results until February of this year, and following that announcement, went to PDAC in Toronto, the big convention, laid out some of that core, and we were fortunate enough to have a number of majors that were really lining up, you know, one behind the other, waiting to see what that core looked like. Newcrest made several visits to the core tent and with us during that week, and showed a real interest based on their experience in the alkalic porphyry systems, which is what La Plata is, with their projects at Cadia Ridgeway and Red Chris, and familiarity with Galore Creek, where much of our management team focused back with Nova Gold back in the day, and developing a 13 billion pound resource there at Galore Creek. So with those similarities and their experience in not only alkalic porphyry systems, but block cave mining, which is a configuration that we see at La Plata, they moved right to the head of the line, and we quickly were able to negotiate a deal which we announced in May of this year. And then it brought $6.3 million into the company. There are some warrants attached to that, which could bring funding for future programs at $6.5 million. Those warrants are at 55 cents. But we've taken the initial investment and we've parlayed it into drilling at La Plata, and we're in progress on a 5,000 meter phase 1 drill program, which will call for about 5 deep holes to follow up on the extensions of the high-grade hole that we drilled in 2022.
Good. Am I right in thinking as well? I mean, it's quite rare, obviously, one fantastic jurisdiction in where we are right now in Colorado, but that deep 800 meter hole, that was actually started, was that the one that started from surface? It
started from surface, so it's continuously mineralized from surface down to 816 meters. It ended because of technical reasons, so we had planned 1,000 meter depth in that hole, but due to technical limitations on the drill, we weren't able to complete to that depth, and it ended in very high grade. So we had essentially the last 30 meters was 1.5% copper equivalent. The last 5 meters was 5%, and the last sample was a little over a half meter, was 11% copper equivalent, with 5% copper, 47 grams silver, 5 grams platinum, 5 grams palladium, and 0.5 gram of gold.
All right, no wonder Newcrest wanted to get involved. Yeah,
exactly. So this year's program, the holes that we're drilling now, we're drilling one above that intercept, and we're drilling currently drilling below it, and we're down at 1,150 meters, and we're seeing continuous mineralization again in similar rock types. So
good.
We're excited.
So talk to me about the exploration program at the moment. You were just talking about 5,000 meters there.
Yes.
What's the strategy? How are you allocating those meters?
Yeah, so really it is, it's going to be deep drilling, because that's where we're seeing this higher grade. And again, in a block cave configuration, typically you have a lot of verticality in these systems, and that's amenable to the block cave methodology of mining. And so what we're doing with the drill program now is really trying to extend our knowledge of that high grade hit in last year's hole. 2204 was that hole. And be able to increase our knowledge to vector to more tons and more grade, but also to add resources as we do so. So we're basically just stepping out and around that hole, and they're long holes, anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 meters for this year. So it'll be 4 or 5 holes, and hopefully should continue to garner interest in the project.
Definitely. Remind us what's in the, there's an MRE around this already, right?
That's correct.
Remind us how that looks, and when was that released? Earlier this year?
Yeah, so in April 2022, we had our inaugural resource estimate. On the backs of the drilling that we did in 2022 summer of, we parlayed that into a resource update, which we announced in July of this year.
Yep.
And that is 1.32 billion pounds of copper and 17 million ounces of silver. And I think it's important to note that with this resource update, largely on the one good hole, but the resource still does not include gold, platinum, and palladium. So historically, in the historic drilling, they didn't sample for that. So as we add more data and more density of data in and around the deposit, we should be able to add those elements, which in 2204 represented nearly 50% of the value, the equivalent value for that hole.
Yeah, so. No, it's all about rock value in this game. Good. What's the potential here in terms of, obviously when Newcrest have been looking at this and they came into the data room, I guess, what sort of feedback were you given by them in terms of how are they looking at this project, and have they changed your mind in terms of the way that you look at the project?
Well, I think the key thing is that, you know, they would like to see 50 to 100 million tons of higher grade material, maybe on the order of a percent. And we've demonstrated that that's possible with last year's drilling, and hopefully with this year's drilling as well. But you know, that's kind of the kicker, the sweet spot for them to say, look, if we get 50 to 100 million tons of a percent, then we can do something with that. And so I think we're on the track to really identify that as we go, and we're excited about where it takes us.
Good. And just as we stay on with Plata, I guess talk me through what the next year looks like, because obviously you're doing this drilling now, you'll get the assays back. Obviously, depending on what they look like, hopefully they're brilliant. What's the next step for this project?
Yeah, well, I think the next step really is, we're kind of well funded for 2 years worth of exploration, but obviously it'd be nice to have that top up or a warrant exercise from Newcrest to be able to expand that program and continue to look at drilling and defining resources and coming out with resource updates with an eye towards, eventually seeing if we have something that's economic through a preliminary economic analysis.
Good, and I don't want to get you to stick to a timeline on a PEA, but when do you think people might be able to expect that?
Well, I think it's really early stage right now. So, we're still in this resource growth stage, and that's where we see right now that we can add the most value. It's a big project. It's 40 plus square kilometers. It's a district that has been consolidated and really not explored in over 50 years. And so we're the first ones to kind of have district access. And through our work over the last couple of years, we've identified 16 other targets on the project. And typically these alkaline porphyry systems, they have multiple centers, intrusive centers of mineralization. And so our hope is that we'll continue to not only develop the Allard resource and see where that takes us, but to have the chance to sprinkle in some tests on these other potential porphyry centers that we've identified.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, Does one of the critiques of obviously releasing a PEA is that people sort of feel like you've sort of drawn a line in the sand on that, that sort of identified that is it, right?
That's right.
And I guess the more drilling you can do in the meantime, the bigger we'll eventually see that. So that's fine, that's good. Let's go on to, is it Keno Hill, isn't it?
Keno Hill, Keno Silver Project in the central part of the Yukon territories. It really was our flagship project when Metallic Minerals was formed in 2016. We still see a lot of value there and a lot of potential to grow resources. Our current plan is to announce an inaugural resource for that project by the end of this year, excuse me. And so we're excited to get that out to the public and demonstrate that we've been adding value over the last several years through our modest drill programs that we've been able to conduct there.
And just remind me, what's the sort of grades that you've been receiving there? What sort of size is this deposit? Obviously it's PGMs, but
yeah.
And also you're strategically located next to a pretty large mine at the moment, aren't you?
That's right. So the bigger part of the story there is that Hecla Mining, third largest primary silver producer in the world, is moved in. They acquired Alexco Resources and became our brownfields neighbor there in the district in September of 2022 with an eye towards restarting production on their resources by the end of this year. They expect to be at full production, which is 4 to 5, 5.5 million ounces a year. And so, for us to be identifying resources next door that are essentially in multiples of years of production for Hecla, I think is a real feather in our cap and really helps kind of establish a base of value for the project that we can capitalize on and continue to explore and develop the project.
It's good. No, but like you said, it used to be a core focus for you, and it's, that in itself is a project in its own right. And then obviously the drill results at La Plata obviously changed the focus a little bit, I guess, on priorities. But what a lot of people do when they've got two really nice assets like that, and maybe one isn't being valued as greatly as the other, is obviously spin out. Is that something that you guys have considered?
Well, I think we're going to continue to look at what provides the most value for our shareholders in any circumstance. So whether it's keeping the projects together, eventually there will be pressure to split, and that's a possibility. May not be near term necessarily, but we're going to be opportunistic and look at what works best for our shareholders.
Good. And I guess just I know you've already touched on what to expect moving forward, but just remind us very briefly what should we be looking out for over the next 6 months?
Yeah, well, one other thing I'd like to just mention too is we have royalty income from our Klondike alluvial royalty portfolio. We signed an agreement in January with Parker Schnabel of Little Flake Mining, who's on the hit show Gold Rush on TV on the Discovery Channel. Yeah. And he's initiated mining on our project. So we're beginning to see royalties from that work to help offset exploration and back office costs. So in that realm, we're hopeful that we can actually add additional operators to alluvial ground that we own to continue to build the royalty part of our business.
And what's the revenue looking like, or forecast consensus pricing in terms of what that could generate for you?
Well, at the peak scale with the one operator, Parker, he mined $20 million worth of gold last year. We would expect him in a full season, this was a starter year, in a full season to go somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 ounces. And so you can imagine 10 to 15% royalty on that. That's a pretty good chunk of change for us, particularly if we have the ability to add additional operators to the project.
And how does that work? Is that a net smelter return or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Straight net smelter. So
10 and it's 10%.
10 to 15%. Yeah.
That's a pretty good NSR.
Yeah. Okay. Well, costs are really cheap in the alluvial world, and that's a fairly common kind of percentage for royalties in that part of the business.
Good. And I guess you were talking there that there is more land there for you to potentially generate more income,
right? So yeah, we have essentially the third largest land holding of alluvial claims in the Yukon territories. And so we're continually working to find new operators to come in and take other sections of that ground to just build out the business. And they might not be at the same scale as Parker, but even a little bit. If it's 500 or 1,000 ounces a year, that's income.
And that isn't land that you'd be tempted to operate yourselves?
No, I don't think we have the skill set necessarily to be miners, or particularly alluvial miners. But we know how to acquire the land, maintain it, get the permits, do the exploration work, and find the operators to advance the project.
What are you looking at? What are we looking out for over the next 12 months?
Well, in terms of catalysts, our first catalyst is going to be our inaugural resource estimate at the Keno Silver Project in the central part of the Yukon. Following that, we'll have drilling updates on our La Plata drilling, and we're excited to be announcing probably inaugural results for this program sometime in the fall into early winter. Additionally, we are initiating a drill program at our Keno Silver Project right now, so we should have results from that also by early winter. The idea of adding a couple of new royalty operators to our alluvial claim is also a possibility as we continue to work forward. But, you know, drill results, inaugural resource, we've got a lot on our plate, and we're excited to get that information out to the public.
Good. Scott, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.